Welcome to the Teapot Reads. My name's Sam. I'm the Teapot. This is what I'm currently reading, and I am so happy to see you today. Let's get this out of the way. There are definitely titles that slipped through the cracks, and not just like I was looking at my shelf and like glanced past the book, but like I've read the book in the past and didn't consider it. I really only considered books I have on my shelves right now. I feel like that's a pretty good idea of if I love a book enough to keep it or to rebuy a copy if I've lost it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about I ranked my top 50 books that I own, my top 50 favorite reads. I did it. It took me about 2 hours. It took me a long time. I have, so let's see, I have like the printed out sheets that I did, and I like chunked them up. And then like as I was going, I would then like on the back like continue ranking them and got my final one. So it took me a while, and it was actually really satisfying and kind of a nice meditation. But I did it. I ranked my top 50. I started with about 130 titles, and from there was able to not only put them all in order, but wean it down to like what my top 50 would be. It was difficult. It was fun. It was surprising because I was kind of waffling like, is it based on I would reread it the most, like I love it the most, or is it based on this book is objectively good? And I did take in the objectively good portion, but was leaning more towards do I love it? And if I was stuck between two books, it was if I'm going to be stuck somewhere with a book and I have to choose between book A and B, and I'll never be able to see the other book ever again, like which book would I like to be stuck with? That kind of helped me in the final deciding of some of these. And actually it was a little surprising because there are some books that I absolutely love that did not even make my top 50. I surprised myself quite a bit with that. Like there are some books that last year and like wrap-ups I'll talk about, I'm like, this is one of my favorite books. Like it is. But when I was stacking it against other books, it would fall shorter than I thought it would. So that was surprising. There are quite a few surprises for me. But since this is 50 books, I'm not going to be talking about every single one. I'm not going to be holding every single one up and talking about it. I will be talking about some of them, and I will be using images. Like they will be on the screen. Editing me do that. But me in person, I just have this stack, and I think it's in camera shot. If not, it's right off camera. I have this stack about as little like shoulder height of books that I for sure want to talk about. I also like, so I broke series up and ranked each book individually, and that was really difficult for some series. I was like, oh, this is impossible. There's only one series I didn't do that for, and I'll talk about it when I get to it, but I had to kind of clump it together. You'll see it's different from the other books on this list. But breaking up series was interesting and really made me think about which books in the series do I value the most, and that's really curious. So you're going to see a lot of series out of order on here. But I'm just going to kind of go through them quickly. Like I said, 50 books. I'm not going to spend too much time on any of them, but I have read hundreds of books in my lifetime. I've been an avid reader since, like, I don't know, like kindergarten. My dad would read to me and I loved it, and like since then, basically. So I have just always been a big reader. So my top 50 that I own are like the big 50. So even being 50 is like a great compliment. There are a lot of books on here that I talk about constantly all the time. I don't shut up about them. I'm not going to really talk about those. You know it. You've watched at least maybe one other video, and I've probably mentioned several of these books. So I don't need to go into that. I think you get the idea. Are you excited? Okay. Coming in at number 50. I'm so happy this made the cut. I was worried it wouldn't. Most of these books are like nostalgia picks, but this one made the cut. And this is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I fucking love this book. That's the last time I'm going to try to say it. I'm going to try not to say I love this book for every single book. Legendborn. Amazing. This is Tracy Deonn's debut. Never would have guessed. It's stunning. It's so well put together. It does a great job of mixing Arthurian legend and witchcraft and American history like the good parts, but mostly the bad parts, especially slavery and the consequences of slavery on modern day descendants, and like almost a little dark academia and secret societies and King Arthur, and I think I mentioned that, but it just does a great job of mixing it all together. And Bree is a phenomenal character. It also deals with trauma. It deals with Black Lives Matter and socially conscious movements, and it is perfect. It is a YA urban fantasy. I do talk about this book a lot, but I wanted to highlight that it made it onto the list because I was just really happy. I think this is one of the only like books on this list that doesn't have some sort of nostalgia factor. It's much more of a recent read than a lot of these others. So just awesome. Congrats, Legendborn. You are number 50. You are part of my top 50. Then I have The Dream Thieves. This is book 2 in the Raven cycle. I think that most of the other books made it onto this list. I'm pretty sure that Blue Lily, Lily Blue did not make it on. Just not my favorite one. But The Dream Thieves at number 49. At number 48, we have Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I have reread this book several times. I like this book. I didn't say love. I like this book. I've actually seen the stage adaptation of it a couple times as well. My school did a production and I went and saw another production of it when I was in the city. Really good. If you ever get the chance, I do recommend it, but I think they've actually retired performing it, which is a shame because it was really cool. The audiobook, the full cast audiobook as well, phenomenal. I read the novel and then I listened to the full cast production and they're both really good. Number 40, that was 48. 47, we have Grave Peril. This is the first of the Dresden File books to make it on this list. You will see quite a few of these. Then we have at number 46, The Raven King. I love the Raven cycle. This was a phenomenal conclusion. Number 45. Number 45, I actually did want to talk about this one a little bit. This is Circe. You've probably seen this book. It's by Madeline Miller. It is a retelling of Circe and in some ways a retelling of the Odyssey and the Minotaur and Icarus. It's got a lot of myths in here. I read this after I read Song of Achilles, which is a great choice because as much as I enjoyed Song of Achilles, it was not even factored into my top 50 like competition between the books. It didn't even make it, but Circe did. This book really struck a nerve with me, I think because Circe is such a wonderful, powerful character. I hate the term strong female character because I think it's overused and not a good explanation or description of female characters. It kind of pigeonholes them in a very different way, but Circe is a really phenomenal female lead and a book that everyone should read, but particularly I think all women should read this book. So numbers 44 through 42 are actually all part of the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. It has been a long time since I read this trilogy, so I don't remember too many details. I did really enjoy them. I still really have fond memories of them. And I do remember, like, in relation to each other, how much I liked them. So, number 44, we have The Final Empire, aka Mistborn. Number 43, we have Hero of Ages, which is the finale to the original trilogy. And then in number 42, we have Well of Ascension. I almost forgot the title. Well of Ascension. I strongly remember that being my favorite book. I should reread those. They were really, really good. I think they deserve a reread. And then coming in at number 40, we have Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. I love this book. I think sadly it's out of print. It's by April Genevieve Tucholke. It is perfect. Yes. I think if you like a lot of the books I'm going to name on this list, you should probably check out Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. Ebook copies I'm sure are still available, and I know you can buy used copies because I convinced someone in my life to buy a used copy. I was like, you have to read this book, and she loved it, so you know. Number 39, we have Ghost Story. This is one of the Dresden Files. I love the trope in this book. I love the trope. It's not the best Dresden Files, but the trope does a lot for me. I think actually, side note, but ranking the Dresden File books were very difficult. One, because I read them so close to each other that the plots feel like they bleed into one another. But two, because they're all so good. They did not all make the top 50 though. They did not. Ghost Story did. And then we also have another Dresden Files coming in at 38, which is Cold Days. I like a lot that this book does, but it's not the strongest. There's so much about it to like, but it's got a couple flaws that prevented it from being higher, which is a shame because I kind of wished it could have been higher, but I just, in good faith, couldn't have. 37, I did not think this book was going to make it this far. We have Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is not the copy I read. The copy I read is in pieces and probably the garbage can. It just was the tiny mass market edition and was very hard to read. I desperately want them to put out a really nice collector's edition, like hardcover. I think that would be nice. Someone get on that. But I don't think Bloomsbury does a lot of collector's editions, which is interesting. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, though. I love this. It's dense, okay? It's dense. It's got footnotes. It's beautiful. There's art, I vaguely remember. It's kind of like Dickensian, the way the art is used. It's about two rival magicians. It's so atmospheric. It's set in Victorian London, I want to say, or Regency, England, right around there. It has been a while since I've read this. It starts in 1806. So it has been a while since I've read this. I read it in my first year of college. Super formative book for me. On one hand, I wish there were more like it. On the other hand, I'm so glad there aren't, because no one could do this book better than Susanna Clarke could. She has, I mean, I know there's the Ladies of Grace Adieu, but she had in the past mentioned that at some point there might be some sort of follow-up. My fingers are crossed, but I'm thinking that's not going to happen. But anyways, I enjoyed the miniseries. I think the book is a lot better, but I do like a lot of things that the miniseries does. I think that it does a really good job adapting this tome. So if you want to know the story, but don't think you have the patience for the book, start with the miniseries, and then you'll probably change your mind and actually go read the book anyways, because that's actually what happened with me. I watched the miniseries first and I was like, this is amazing, this is a book, I have to read this. Another Dresden coming in at, what is that, 40, or I'm sorry, 30, I didn't write down the numbers on this list. At 37, we have another Dresden Files, Deadbeat. This one's fun. This is the one that if I was going to tell someone, okay, you're never going to read another book in the series, or you really just want to skip the first so many, start with Deadbeat. Give Deadbeat a chance. The series is not good at being read out of order, but if you're going to read a book out of order, Deadbeat. And then Pierce Brown made quite a few appearances here. In position number 36, we have Iron Gold. Then we've got in 35, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I do really like this book. On one hand, I'm surprised it's not higher. On the other hand, I'm surprised it's not lower. But it is a good book. It's classic for a reason. I think it's also getting banned for some reason right now, and all the bannings, like, which is, I'm not going off on a huge tangent, but it is ridiculous. Like, you're banning this book, you're banning any books. And I hate you. But we're not going into it. A lot of people are gonna think I'm basic for quite a few books that are going to appear on this list. And I think the first of those is ACOTAR at 34. I love this trilogy. We're not going to talk about Court of Frost and Starlight or Court of Silver Flames. We're pretending they don't exist for the sake of I love the original 3 books. And ACOTAR is on here, 34. Absolutely adore this story. It's such a good start. It lays such a great groundwork of the characters. Anyway, yeah, a lot of Sarah J. Maas books on this list, but not all of them. There are quite a few I dislike, actually. I'm mature enough to admit that she's not a perfect writer. But the next two, 33 and 32, are taken up by Queen of Shadows and Throne of Glass. I love Throne of Glass. I read this like the month it came out. I have been a big fan of the series since then. Made me fall in love with Selena Sardathian. I actually was drawn to this cover. This cover is the reason I picked it up. I like this cover. Throne of Glass started for me the era of reading fantasy regularly. I've always read fantasy books, but I was more interested in paranormal romance and urban fantasy than I was epic fantasy and high fantasy. I had before that point read some other titles. I think I read Rhaenyra before I read Throne of Glass. but my heart was paranormal stuff. And this changed that. I could never look back. I don't know what I would be reading today if I hadn't picked up this book when I did. Probably still fantasy, but I think that this formed just a lot of my tastes for fantasy, so I think it would be different fantasy. In spot 31, we have Royal Assassin. All three of the Farseer trilogy make it onto this list, but Royal Assassin made it the lowest. I do really enjoy this book, and the ending of this book is, like, the last 100 pages just blows my mind every time I read it, but overall, I think it's the least interesting of the three. I like the traveling in Assassin's Quest. I should say that. A lot of people don't and find it boring. I really enjoyed all that. Royal Assassin had just other things that I found boring, so I think I'm against the grain on that one. In spot number 30, we have Assassin's Apprentice, another Robin Hobb right off the bat. This is such a wonderful book. I actually recently reread it, which you may or may not know if you've been following the channel for a bit. Rereading it didn't reveal necessarily new things to me from the text, but it enhanced my enjoyment of it, and I didn't lose anything, and it was just as good. Like, I could love everything about it again. I think that's really rare. I love being able to reread books. If I can't reread a book, unless I have some other purpose for keeping it, I tend to get rid of it after a couple years, because if the book can't continue to bring me pleasure, why am I holding on to it? But Assassin's Apprentice, I know I'm going to hold on to this book for my entire life, even if it's not the same copy, but this book, this trilogy is just that important to me. A lot of books on this list are very important, but Robin Hobb's got a very special place in my heart. Spot 29 has Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas, and spot 28 has Froy of the Exiles by Melina Marchetta. I do not talk too much about this series, but I do love this series. This is probably one of the most competently written YA fantasy trilogies ever written. Sadly, I think they're going out of print. Strongly recommend if you get the chance to read them. I read them from my library first, and then I had to buy copies. And actually, I didn't buy them. I asked for them for Christmas that year, and my parents got them for me, which is fantastic. This is not a knock against them, but a lot of times when I ask for books, I don't actually get books because they're like, you just buy books anyways. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. I do buy books. In spot 27, did I lose track of the numbers I was on? I feel like I've been saying wrong numbers occasionally. I'll make sure there's like a number on the screen. But number 27, we have Skin Game, another Dresden Files. This series is going to continue making appearances, okay? This series, one of my favorite series of all time. I can't wait. I will definitely be rereading them in lead up to whatever book comes next, but that might be a while, so I'm kind of okay giving myself a little bit of a breather from them so I have time to read other books. But oh gosh, I love these books. Skin Game, it's fantastic. Didn't think I was going to love it as much as I did. Like, I was enjoying it and loving it, and then like the last 200 pages, phenomenal. Take the series to a completely other level, which I never would have expected, because it really doesn't set itself up as that different of a Dresden File book until you get to the end. And then in spot 26, we have Name of the Wind. I don't talk about this series that much either, or how much I love it, but if you've watched any of my vlogs, you've probably caught I have a sword in my room. It's Seishura from the Kingkiller Chronicles. I really love these books. They're really great. One of those series that I just recommend to everyone, whether or not they like fantasy. I think it's just a great go-to series. I know some people hate it. It's really divisive, but yeah. And another Pierce Brown coming in at 25, we have Morning Star. This is a great conclusion to the trilogy. I am happy that there's more books, but if Morning Star had been the last one, I also would have been okay with that. Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This book's phenomenal. It deserves a reread from me, and maybe actually this year. I love this. Naomi Novik, one of my favorite writers. Uprooted, probably, no, definitely, no, yes, definitely. I couldn't remember if Deadly Education made it higher, but it didn't actually make the top 50. So yes, Uprooted, my favorite Naomi Novik book. Then we have American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I used to tell people this was my favorite book, and it really was for a really long time. It's fallen out of that position. I don't know if a reread might return it higher, but for now it is just in spot, what spot is that? Spot 23 for American Gods. I've seen the TV show. I pretend the TV show ended after season 1 for personal reasons. Season 1 was phenomenal, though. Then we have Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This book. Guys, this book. I love it. I told myself I wasn't going to try to say that. Sorry. I don't love it. I just return to it quite frequently and tell every single person in my life that they need to read it. Yes, I know the author's a little problematic. I don't want to, like, I don't want to harp on that, or the fact that, like, several of the authors on this list are problematic, or the fact that this list is really, like, white people. I know I'm working on it. If you watch my monthly wrap-ups, I talk about it more in depth there, but I'm working on diversifying my shelf in my reading. Hopefully, in a couple years, I'll redo this kind of video, and you'll see the effect that diversifying my shelf has on it. But for now, like I said, a lot of these nostalgia picks, and I, in the past, did not read particularly diversely, so that's why I have a lot of white people on the list, and why some of them are problematic authors. Okay. Docile by K.M. Spara. I love this book. Oh shit, I did it again. This book is great. Docile by K.M. Spara. The amount of willpower it takes not to use those words. Definitely look up trigger warnings before picking this book up. There is a lot of things that can be triggering. It is basically about I hate to say slavery, but it's like sexual indentured servitude. It's basically sexual slavery. And it's intense. The tagline is, "There is no consent under capitalism." One of the few dystopians that I return to all the time. And this is one of the books that I will go and reread particular passages and scenes. I also, as much as this book can read like fan fiction at times, the way that it takes down a lot of fan fiction tropes and a lot of the things that it sets up that, yes, can be like guilty pleasure reads, it tackles those things and deals with them in a really rational, really down to earth and grounded way. And I really fully appreciate the following through on the consequences and dealing with things and not just being like, yeah, that was bad, let's move on. Like, things are unpacked and it's great. Coming in at spot number 25, we have The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I feel like I've talked about this a lot recently, but I do love this book. I've not read books 2 and 3 yet. They're a priority for this year. Number 24, we have Empire of the Vampire. My whole heart. Go look at my review. I did love this book so much. Coming in at spot 23, we have Assassin's Quest. Yes, it made it best of the 3 Farseer trilogy. I strongly believe this. Let's argue in the comments if you disagree. I liked the traveling parts. They were not exciting, but they were relaxing. And sometimes you need that in a book. They're breathing spaces in a book. Then we have in spot 20... Am I counting correctly? Spot 22. We have, this is the only series I bundled together. This is the Matt Fraction and AJ... What's his name? So sorry. Matt Fraction, David Aja, Hawkeye series. These are phenomenal. These are fantastic. I think the Hawkeye TV series is somewhat based on them. If you've not read these are the best Marvel comics ever written. They're all about breathing space. They also, I didn't realize this until recently. I was like flipping through and I was like, wow, this version of Clint is just like Harry Dresden. So if you like the Dresden Files, you'll probably really like Hawkeye. These are great. Kate is obviously a major player. Volume 3, LA Woman, kind of all about her, but love these so much to death. They're fantastic. Oh, I'm trying not to say that about every book. They are the only non-novel thing to make it onto this list, and I have read quite a few graphic novels, but these are the only ones that I thought worth putting on the list. If that means anything. It probably does. It means more than I love this book. I hope it means more than that. And then in spot 21 we have Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This was the last of them to make it onto the list by Pierce Brown. The ending of Golden Sun is bonkers. In spot 20 we have Kingdom of Ash. Yeah, Sarah J. Maas keeps rearing her head. I do love her writing. I'm quite addicted to it. Can't wait for her new book coming out in a week. Oh my god. Then we have another Dresden with Blood Rites. And then we have another Sarah J. Maas with Crescent City Book 1, House of Earth and Blood. oh my god, this was wild. I was enjoying it. I was loving it. I think the first 100 pages, and that sounds like a lot, but in this book isn't. I feel like the first 100 pages are kind of a slog, and I wasn't like into it, but if I were to go back, I think I would enjoy them. I just needed more context. But I was reading it. One of my coworkers at the time was like, hey, where are you at? I was like, oh, I'm at X page. And she's like, oh my god, shit's about to go down, because she was ahead of me. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I was going to go read at lunch and then go home and read. And oh my god, she wasn't wrong. Shit started happening. The ending of this book, one of the most explosive, one of the most cinematic conclusions to a story ever. Book 2, that's the one coming out in a week. I hope it lives up to it. I hope it's good. Coming in at 17, a book I won't shut up about, Winter Song. And coming in at 16, another Dresden Files, Battleground. This book, everyone. This book. Wow. Almost as good as Changes. No, that was spot 11. I'm so bad at going backwards. Whatever. The number is here. Ignore what I'm saying with the number. That was spot 11. We were in the top 10. We're going into my top 10 books. My top 10 favorite books. Oh my god. This was kind of intense. Number 10. Leviathan Wakes. Speaking of cinematic stories, this novel is the closest to watching a film I've ever seen. I regret that it took me so long to pick it up, and I regret a little bit that I'm only on book 3. I am hoping to conclude this series, but Leviathan Wakes, fantastic. The show, not a big fan of personally. I was just having like canon shock, I think. Coming in at spot 9, we have Clockwork Princess. This is hands down my favorite Shadowhunter book. Hands down. And for a long time, it was my favorite book. This had the number 1 spot for a very, very long time. Spot number 8, Strange the Dreamer. Oh my god, I would die for this book. I would die for Laszlo Strange. I would die for Sarai. I would just give everything to be able to read this book for the first time again. I don't say that a lot because I love being able to return to a book and return to scenes and to characters, but reading Strange the Dreamer for the first time is such a marvelous experience. I wish I could do it again. Spot number 7. Changes! Yes, this is the final Dresden Files book to make it onto this list. Changes. Literally everything changes with this book. Once you get to this point in the series, you can only move forward. You really can't go back. I kind of knew what was going to happen in this book because it's been out for a while, and I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen, but the way it happens and the amount of things that go down in this book, it changes everything very much so. And yes, it's a long series, so if you're like, I have to get to Changes, like, the books, in my opinion, pick up around book 3. Like, you don't have to wait that long. Changes, guys, elevates the series past just regular urban fantasy. It makes it something just... Changes, guys. Oh my god. Oh my god. And then we have in spot 6, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the final Sarah J. Maas book to make it on this list. I'm somewhat surprised it made it so highly, but I love this book. This book not only reached me at the right time, but it has stuck with me, and there are so many things about this book and about Farah's journey in this book that I find personally important. Is it perfect? No. Is the sex in the book even that titillating? No. I mean, not really. Do I have certain thoughts after having read her most recent book in the series that makes me change opinions on certain characters? Yes. This book is still so important and so well loved by me that it had to go this high. Akamath is maybe not her best written novel. I think that goes to Crescent City, but it is the most important one for me. Top 5. I'm pretty secure in saying these are my top 5 books. Spot number 5. Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen. You can't go wrong. I just accidentally kind of made this a habit to read it every year. I'm happy that that happened. Spot number 4, a novel that speaks directly to my soul. PERIL by Susanna Clarke. Describing this novel is really hard, but you know what? I'm not going to waste your time. I'm just going to say go read it. It's short. You can probably finish it in a day. You can probably finish it in a single sitting. PERIL is for everyone who kind of wishes they made it to Narnia and just stayed there forever. Spot number 3, The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. Name of the Wind made it earlier on the list. Wise Man's Fear, in my opinion, is the much better book. Are there points where it's like weird and really slow, and like there's that whole thing in the forest with the fairy? I loved everything. I ate it all up. Like I said, I love novels with breathing space. I think this novel does that perfectly. If we never get book 3, if we never get all the answers, I will be happy having this book. Not that it's like satisfying, like in the sense of the series, but it just gives me so much pleasure. Spot number 2. This isn't surprising, actually, if you know me, because I talk about this all the time. And I think I've mentioned it before, even on the channel, but spot number 2 goes to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This book is my entire personality. And spot number 1, again, not surprising, but A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. It will break your heart. I would say look up trigger warnings, but honestly, just assume that your trigger is in this book, because it probably is. The list of trigger warnings isn't going to do anything. If it's awful and horrible and really bad, it happens in this book. Even so, this is the most amazing book I've ever read. I do not, in good faith, recommend it. But if you read it and you need someone to talk to, I will be here. I will talk about that book forever. There they are! That is my top 50 books that I own. Oh my god. I'm a little exhausted. Just a little bit. That was good though. That was fun. That was a great experience. Ranking them was something else. I'm really happy. This is one of the longer videos I've filmed, like from the beginning of like putting it together to like the actual process. I'm sure editing is going to take a while as well. That's okay. It's something to look forward to. I had a lot of fun. I have this list now. Probably going to keep it. Some other books that didn't make it super far, but I thought I would. Like if you're curious, the next one that probably would have gotten onto the list, probably All Systems Red. No, it probably actually would have been Mr. Impossible and then All Systems Red. This was intense. This was fun. I'm going to keep this list for a while. And I think I said that I think it'd be cool to do another one of these videos in several years down the line. And just to see, you know, what's changed, what my thoughts are, how that's all changed. So maybe come 2027. That's so far in the future. Do you think I'll still be making videos? I hope so. I think this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. But 2027, mark your calendars now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me. If you're new here and you liked this video and you want to see more content, definitely consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it a lot. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you, 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 thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me to know that someone is there listening and curious and just there, just on the other side of the camera. Hello. Thank you. If you're somewhere cold, I hope you're staying warm. If you're somewhere warm, I hope you're staying comfortable. And most of all, I hope you're reading a great book. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!